Have you ever wondered how something so small could make such a big difference? Imagine having just enough food for yourself and seeing it turn into a meal for thousands. What would you do? This is the story of a boy who shared his lunch and how Jesus turned it into a miracle that amazed thousands of people. The sun rose over the hills near the Sea of Galilee, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. People from all over the nearby towns and villages walked for miles to see Jesus. He had been healing the sick and teaching about the kingdom of God, and no one wanted to miss what he would do next. By the time they reached the hillside, the crowd was massive. Men, women, and children gathered, sitting wherever they could find space. Parents held their children close, elders leaned on walking sticks, and young people whispered in excitement. Jesus stood at the top of the hill, his voice clear and gentle.
"Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness,"
he said,
"for they will be filled."
His words reached every ear, filling hearts with hope and joy. Hours passed, and no one noticed how much time had gone by until their stomachs began to rumble.
"Do you think Jesus will stop to eat?"
A woman asked her neighbor.
"I don't think so."
The man replied,
"But how are we supposed to find food in a place like this?"
Jesus noticed the growing restlessness in the crowd. He turned to Philip, one of his disciples, and asked,
"Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?"
Philip's eyes widened. He looked out at the sea of people. There were thousands.
"Lord,"
he said, shaking his head,
"even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to buy enough bread for all these people to have just one bite."
While Philip worried, Andrew, another disciple, approached Jesus with a young boy. The boy held a small bundle in his hands.
"There's a boy here,
Andrew said,
who has 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that for so many?"
The boy stepped forward shyly and offered his lunch to Jesus.
"You can have this,"
he said softly. Jesus smiled warmly at the boy.
"Thank you,"
he said.
"This is perfect."
Jesus told his disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the grassy hillside. The disciples moved through the crowd, organizing them into neat rows. The murmur of the crowd grew louder.
"What's happening?"
One man asked.
"Jesus is about to do something,"
replied another.
"Let's watch."
Jesus held up the boy's small meal. He closed his eyes and prayed, giving thanks to God for the bread and fish. Then he began breaking the bread into pieces and handing it to the disciples to distribute. As the disciples moved through the crowd, the most incredible thing happened. No matter how much bread and fish they handed out, there was always more in their basket. People gasped in amazement. "How is this possible?" a woman whispered to her friend. "It's a miracle," the friend replied. Soon, everyone was eating. The children laughed as they tore into the fresh bread, and parents smiled at each other in relief. It wasn't just a small snack, it was a feast. When everyone had eaten their fill, Jesus told his disciples,
"Gather the leftovers so nothing is wasted."
They returned with 12 baskets full of leftover pieces, far more than what they had started with. The crowd buzzed with excitement. "Surely this man is the prophet we've been waiting for," they exclaimed. The boy watched in wonder as people shared stories of what they had seen. He looked at his empty basket, remembering how small his lunch had been, and marveled at how Jesus had used it to bless so many. This story reminds us of the power of sharing and trusting God. No matter how small your gifts, talents, or resources seem, they can make a big difference when placed in God's hands. Just like the boy's small lunch fed thousands, your kindness and willingness to share can impact the world in ways you might never imagine. If this story inspired you, remember to share what you have and trust God to work through you. Let's learn to give with faith and watch how God multiplies our effort. Like this video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories that uplift and inspire. See you in the next video.